All right, we're gonna open up P and Z meeting at 4:30 on December the 2nd. Before we get started, are they giving away something free here? Did you guys get something way in?
Money?
Pretty good crowd. We missed it. We need to go back out and come in where they're giving the money away. So anyway, thank you all for being here. I know you all have some interest in what's going on today. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from November the 4th. Anybody here have any corrections, anything in the minutes?
Motion to approve.
So we have a motion to approve the minutes, and we have a second. All in favor, raise your hand. So the minutes are approved.
And Mr. Siegerman, if I will, just remind the public, we did have a change in format on the minutes the last few meetings. They are very short action item minutes, kind of following council's lead. They do, online, they correspond with the video of the actual meeting, so the video becomes part of the permanent record. So you'll notice the minutes are a lot less detailed than they used to be, because we have that dual record now. So as we discussed last time, they're a little short and a little brief, but again, they're just action items only. So
Yes, and for those of y'all that are interested, these planning and zoning meetings are recorded, and the video recordings are available to view on the city's website, on Facebook. It usually takes about
a couple days to get it
3 or 4
uploaded.
days for this meeting will be available. So if you have any questions on anything, you can go in and take a look at that. So our first item on the agenda today, we have a celebrity in the house.
I'll do whatever you want.
This is a conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 205 Westminster Street. And this will require a public hearing. We'll let Drew start us off on this before we open up the public hearing.
Okay. This is a resolution to allow a conditional use permit for a short-term rental on part of Lot 34 and Lot 35, Block 106, Westminster 1, more commonly known as 205 Westminster Street. This area is zoned R1, adjacent to Schreiner University. There is no change in zoning, it's just a conditional use permit to allow the short-term rental unit. As a short-term rental unit, they are required 1 parking space per bedroom and 1 additional space for an off-site manager. So in this case, 2-bedroom house, they are required 3 parking spaces. Whoa.
You get us back to the
Yeah.
site plan.
Martin, can you go back to the first page? Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Try that again without getting it stuck. Here's the map showing the adjacent existing and the 2 proposed right in this area. One on Westminster, one on East Main. A little larger view showing a handful in the area. This does have a long driveway along the side of the house, so you can see there's adequate room to get 3 or more cars. Standard conditions for the short-term rental, the guest notification for the letting the operator to let the guests know that they are in a neighborhood. Occupancy taxes are required. Should they choose to put a sign on the property, gives the specifications for that. Again, they do have to meet that minimum off-street parking, maximum occupancy of 10 guests, and of course, any and all other zoning regulations still apply. I believe the owner is here. If you had any questions on this one, I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Let's open up the public hearing and we can hopefully take care of everything. So we'll open up the public hearing at 4:34 on 205 Westminster Street. And is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this conditional use permit? So no one wishes to speak, so I'm going to close the public hearing at 4:35. Guys, any questions or any observations, concerns?
I don't know, to my way of thinking, this is a nice little neighborhood. I hate to I realize it backs up to the university. And that's,
And we do have one, sorry to interrupt, we do have one block over on Rawson Street that was approved by conditional use permit. And of course, another one on this agenda immediately around the corner.
yeah.
The one that was approved,
I think it's
yeah, I see it.
200 block of Rawson Street, that little red dot that you see there at the top of the screen. I think that one was, I want to say 6 or 7 months ago, earlier this year, that it was approved.
Can you put the neighborhood map up, Drew?
This one or the aerial?
Ariel, there you go. So basically, this one is in the same neighborhood as the Rawson Street.
That's correct. That's the one on Rawson, I believe, is this property here. It's one of these two properties.
You send letters to the neighbors?
Yes.
Are
Again, you got-
the owners of this property here?
Here.
Could you maybe come up and we could ask you a couple of questions if you don't mind?
And Mr. Tuttle, to answer your question, the dashed line around, there's a microphone right there. The dashed line around the map there is the notification area. We've
You guys
received no
live in the
comments.
neighborhood, sir?
I live next door.
Live next door? So you'll be able to monitor this thing pretty close, won't you?
Oh, you know it.
Do you, I'm sure you have contact with your neighbors and everyone kind of knows, we got no letters of opposition to this thing, so,
We've been in the neighborhood for 15 years there.
okay.
I know all my neighbors. We all,
Everyone's
we all
fully aware
have
what's-
block parties. I mean, we're all just good friends.
Okay,
Hey, can I get your name and record, or name and address for the record?
My name's Abel Paredes.
Okay,
Address is 207 Westminster.
thank you.
so I assume you're fully aware of all the requirements and all the
Yeah, yes, sir.
rules and everything?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, no off-street parking and,
Yes, sir. This has been about a year in process.
okay, great. Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions? I'm kind of more inclined to approve something like that when the owner lives right next door because he's got a pretty big vested interest in the neighborhood, so. If no one has any questions or any more comments or anything, I would entertain a motion to approve the conditional use permit for 205 Westminster. We have a motion to approve. We have a second, we have a motion and a second, all in favor? All right, motion is approved. Thank you, sir, appreciate it. Thank you for being here. So we'll go to 2B, a conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 1796 Arcadia Loop.
This is a resolution to allow the conditional use permit for the short-term rental on 1.58 acres out of the Laura Survey number 123, abstract number 225, more commonly known as 1796 Arcadia Loop. This one is zoned R2, as is the adjacent neighborhood. Property, of course, is on a residential street as a 3-bedroom home, so they will be required 4 off-site parking spaces. There is at least one grandfathered short-term rental down the street on Arcadia Loop. I believe that one's been in operation for 5 or 6 years, actually. Here's the survey of the property. As you can see, the concrete drive goes all the way back behind the property to the existing garage. So they do have ample parking opportunity on site, existing, and of course, room for additional parking if necessary. And we don't have any comments from any adjacent property owners. And again, standard conditions recommended for this one as well.
So we'll open up a public hearing on this conditional use permit at 4:39. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on the conditional use permit on Arcadia Loop?
Yeah, I will. I'm a neighbor over there. I'm at 1800.
Okay,
Yeah.
you want to step up, sir?
And just state your.
Right there. Microphone, yes, sir.
State your name and
My name's Michael J. Wilson, and I own 1800 Arcadia Way. And I didn't know that we'd have to vote on this today. I didn't know that I knew this, but I didn't know it'd be like done and over with today.
Did you
So-
receive a letter?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but I thought it was kind of like an investigative meeting about, what effects it would do with the property owners around it. So, what are they trying to do? Are they just gonna have like a bed and breakfast, or?
A short-term rental unit is exactly what it says. The occupancy for the short-term rental unit, I believe, is limited to 30 days. And then at that point, you have to move out. You can't, it's not for long-term rental. There's very specific rules and regulations about what they have. They can't have any on-street parking. They set guidelines on noise, on lights, on nighttime activities and things like that. It's usually, it's governed by, you're granted the conditional permit to do the short-term rental. The city has rules you have to abide by, and then it's up to the owner to monitor that, and if there's any issues, to take care of it. Do you know, are the people that own this here?
Hello, how are you?
Hi,
We're
hello.
neighbors.
And it's typically, it's not an investigative process. What it is when this is put on the agenda, the notices are sent out to everybody that owns property, I think within 200 feet. And they're given the opportunity to make comments beforehand. But this is the process.
Okay.
This is where this will be approved or denied. And if you have concerns or you can express whatever your opinion is about. Typically what happens in these, and I'm not an expert, and I don't own these CUP properties. We might be able to get some questions answered from the owners. They're typically high-end, high-priced, nightly rentals. They're not usually, 20 people. They're limited to 10 people anyway. They're not usually high volume party type properties because they're usually very expensive.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area, it's
It is.
secluded.
I drove it today.
And I've been wanting property back there for 20 years, and I finally obtained it, and I enjoy it, and probably will be living there, within the next couple of years.
Yes, sir.
And that's why I showed up today. But, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna have a problem with it, so.
Well, would one of you guys like to stand up where we can ask you a couple of questions?
Sure, we can both stand up, yeah.
That'd be great. So you are the owners of the property?
Yes.
Correct.
Are you local?
We both live in Austin with our families, but I spend the weekdays out here.
Okay, so you will be your own property manager?
Well, we also have hired a neighbor down the street who keeps an eye on it when we're not here, and he also takes care of the lawn and basically watches over the property. for us.
So if there is an issue there with something going on there that shouldn't be going on there, who will be contacted?
The neighbor that lives right next to us. that
And
we hired.
ourselves.
Yep, and us, yep.
That's usually the biggest concern. The biggest concern is, you in the neighborhood where people live, and
Yeah.
weren't planning to have rental properties in the neighborhood.
Well, we
They'd
kind
like-
of got it because she's got kids and we love it out here. We just can't be out here full time all
Sure.
of the time, so it was kind of a happy medium for us until.
Right, and it's the
Weekends.
same situation as Abe. We have all of our neighbors' phone numbers, so if there's ever any complaints, people are free to contact us directly.
Right, and so maybe you
Happy
would,
to get your cell phone number too.
Yep.
And, yeah. and
is there
happy to-
anyone else?
Yes.
And can I get your names and address for the record?
I'm Divya Patnaik,
I'm in Austin.
Okay.
and do you want this address or?
Either one's
This is
fine.
1796 Arcadia Loop.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm done, thank you.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it, thank you, ladies. No one else to speak, we'll close the public hearing at 4:44. Guys, any questions, any concerns, any observations about what this,
The one that was grandfathered you mentioned earlier, do you have the address of that one right off the top?
Not off the top of my head.
Is it close by or?
It is. It's within that first half block before you even get to Bear Creek. There may be one other on Arcadia Loop, or it may just be a multi-unit property. But that one's been open. Like I said, I think it's been 5, 6, 7 years that one's been in operation, and we've never had any complaints documented from it. So
Right.
obviously, again, high-end property right on the river.
It's a beautiful area. I drove
It
it
is.
today. I didn't even know that, that was in the city. I've been down there before. I didn't realize, but
Mhm.
it's a great
Beautiful area.
neighborhood. I mean, everything there looks really nice. I mean, it actually looked like there could be some other, like rental properties in there that you don't even know about, but I mean, so another question I would have is, I couldn't see the driveway when I drove down there, so the driveway is an existing driveway that has
It is.
parking for,
There you could probably, I'm guessing, but you could probably park 2 vehicles before you get to a gate.
Mhm.
And then the gate, once the gate's open, obviously you can get all the way back here
Okay.
to the back of the house where there's an additional garage. And then, of course, ample space back there, so.
So there's a 2-car garage, and then there's ample space on the driveway as well. So.
And then even across the street for just the property alone,
Right.
we could have tenants park if that needs to be.
And they do own both sides of
I
the
saw
street.
that,
So it's not improved, but there is room if needed.
well, one of the main rules about these conditional use permits is they are not allowed any, street parking. They're not allowed to have any off-site parking, and that's one of the things that protects the neighborhood from having 15 cars parked out there or something like that, so. All right, any other questions? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 1796 Arcadia Loop.
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. The motion passes. Good luck, ladies. Appreciate your interest in Kerrville. All right, we're gonna go to 2C.
So the resolution to allow a conditional use permit for a short-term rental on parts of Lot 5, Block 42, Westland Place, more commonly known as 600 Woodlawn Avenue. This area is zoned R1 and R1A, combination across Woodlawn. This is a 3-bedroom house, or excuse me, 2-bedroom house. There'll be 3 parking spaces required. There are a few existing and a few conditional use permits that have been approved in the area. Kind of a larger view looking down towards the river and downtown. See the proximity there by way of Junction Highway, West Water Street. Here's site plan off of the appraisal district. Went ahead and added the aerial photos so you can see the parking. The driveway does go all the way back to that garage. There is also a side drive off street. So there is certainly room for at least 4, if not more, parking spaces. Standard conditions recommended. No additional conditions that we've seen fit for this one. Be pleased to answer any questions before or after public hearing.
So let's open the public hearing on 600 Woodlawn at 448. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in regard to the 600 Woodlawn for this conditional use permit? No one wishing to speak. I'll close the public hearing at 4:48. And are the owners of 600 Woodlawn here?
I'm here.
How are you, ma'am?
Good, thank you.
So, you know, I looked at the property. It's got plenty of room. I mean, it appears to be kind of something that would not, be an adverse effect on the neighborhood because of the size of the property and where it is. But it does look like that you might need to do a little improvement for the parking. I'm not exactly sure. I know it doesn't have to be paved or anything, but did you look at that, Drew?
Yes, it is paved. So the parking actually goes all the way back to the garage. Assuming the garage is open, that'd be 2 spaces. I could easily see 4 vehicles parked in front of the garage. And there's actually
Oh, I noticed over here, yeah.
there's kind of a side portion to that driveway as well, where you can see a truck and trailer parked in the aerial
Saw that.
photo. Of course, that was earlier this year, or earlier in 2020. But there is ample room for 4 to 6 cars.
And how many bedrooms?
2.
Bedrooms.
Yeah.
So you have plenty of parking.
Only 3 spaces required, so.
Yeah. Are you local, ma'am?
I am, yes. My husband and I both.
So
lived
you will
here
be
for 30
monitoring what's
years.
going on.
Yes, yeah.
Anybody have any questions? Have no questions. I looked at the property. It seems to be very applicable for the conditional use permit for a short-term rental. Anybody have if no one has any questions, I'll entertain a motion for the. So we have a motion to approve for the short-term rental on 600 Woodlawn Avenue. Can we get a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, the motion is approved. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
You bet. Good luck. I guess this is short-term rental day. Conditional use permit for short-term rental at 400 Lowry Street.
Yes, a resolution to allow the CUP for a short-term rental on part of lot 21 and part of lot 22, block 8, Lowry Edition, more commonly known as 400 Lowry Street. This area is zoned R1A, a single-family residential with accessory dwelling unit. It is a two-bedroom house as well, required 3 off-street parking spaces. Looking at this one, let's see, we do have several in the area that have been approved by conditional use permit and a couple grandfathered. The 2 on Starkey Street, 2 others on Lowry Street as you get closer to Water Street. Another one on Hugo, another one on Guadalupe. There's 3 on Guadalupe, and again, a couple others in that neighborhood there between Junction Highway, Water Street, and Guadalupe Street. Just down the street from Lowry Park, which is also a trailhead, obviously right around the corner from downtown, easy access to get to shopping downtown and access to the river and the river trail. Looking at the site plan, they did show 4 parking spaces in that driveway. Driving by, I think they're counting part of the right-of-way as well. So we'll have to do some work on the driveway to get 3 parking spaces.
She will.
This is one that is not fully paved. There is some pavement or some gravel, so they'll have to do some improvements, and we'll work with the applicant on that. Following the if it's approved at city council, we'll work with them prior to opening for operations go through an inspection
You're talking about
process.
the 4 parking spaces that are on Palmer, right? That are
Yeah,
where
this
the
driveway.
light pole is, right there in front of the driveway?
Yeah, from the light pole to the existing shed is really only enough room for 1 car deep. Existing, there's probably room for 2 next to each other. They would need to expand that and possibly move part of the fence to get a 3rd vehicle in there.
Is this a 2-bedroom?
2-bedroom.
So it requires 3 parking spaces?
That's correct. They do have opportunity, they could put a driveway on Lowry Street as well if they wanted to do separate parking. Certainly not required if they just want to expand the existing parking, but again, we'll work with the applicant for an inspection process prior to opening for operation.
All right, we'll open the public hearing on the Lowry Street at 453. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on 400 Lowry Street for a conditional use permit for short-term rentals? All right, since no one wants to speak, we'll close the public hearing at 453. Are the owners of 400 Lowry here? Would you like to step up, ma'am?
Hi,
Your name and
Callie Pipes.
where do you live, ma'am?
I live here in Kerrville,
What's your address?
908 Jefferson Street.
I took a look at it. I mean, it's a nice little place. I actually happen to have a relative that rented it at one time,
Okay.
so I'm kind of familiar with it. I believe that you can get 3 parking spaces back there. I don't think you can get 4.
Right.
But if 3 is all that's required. Anybody have any questions for the owner? So you will kind of be managing this
I
yourself?
will have a company managing it.
Oh,
for
great.
me. Yes, because the next one is my property too. I just have a job and I'm busy and I don't have enough time to manage it. But I am in town and available. But a management company will be here with the property manager.
Cool.
in
So
town.
we've had no letters or anything from the neighbors?
I don't believe so.
Here's one.
Oh, yes, there was one.
Yeah, sorry, we did have one. They did not, 209 Guadalupe Street.
We had two, we had one that was against and one that was for, I believe, didn't we? Or just,
It was on different ones. Just that first sheet is for Lowry.
oh, okay.
Yeah, just the one for Lowry, down around the corner on Guadalupe Street.
Are they here? I guess not. Any questions or concerns for this one, for this conditional use permit? Any other questions for the owner? All right, if we have no questions, I would entertain a motion on this short-term rental at 400 Lowry Street.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. We have a second? We have a second. Motion and second. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, this will be approved. Okay, conditional use permit for short-term rental, 1807 East Main Street.
Says lot 31 and part of the alley of block 106 Westminster Edition, more commonly known as 1807 East Main Street. This area is zoned R1, immediately adjacent to Schreiner University as well. And a two-bedroom house.
You're done, ma'am. You were approved.
This one's mine too.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Again, we had the one on Westminster, the one on Rawson, and then a few other in the adjacent neighborhoods. This one, same thing. There's room for 3 parking
Yeah, I looked at
spaces.
this. This is a pretty nice location here.
The survey here, there's probably room for 1 covered under here. Just the depth isn't quite room for 2. But the survey doesn't show that the driveway is actually wider than this.
Right.
It's paved out in front of the porch and the front door as well. So there's still room for 3 or 4 parking spaces. Again, we'll work with her to, Ms. Pipes, just to make sure that that is verified before we start operations.
This also requires a public hearing, so I'm gonna open the public hearing at 4:57 on this 1807 East Main Street. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this conditional use permit at 1807 Main Street? All right, so I'm gonna close the public hearing at 4:58, and so will you, I guess you'll have this one with the property management?
Yes.
Okay.
And my dad, he lives right behind that one, so we're like, his backyard is by mine, so he can watch it also.
There you go. Any questions, guys? Any concerns, any issues? All right, I'll entertain a motion on this issue.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of 1807, raise your hand. All right, this conditional use permit is approved for 1807 East Main. Good luck, ma'am. You bet. Conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 960 Prescott Street.
This is lot 16 and part of lot 15, block 7 Hillcrest Edition, more commonly known as 960 Prescott Street. This area is zoned R1 single family, just adjacent to Schreiner Golf Course. Of course, down Golf Street, you hit Sidney Baker, down Cypress Creek Road, you're right to Loop 534. Easy access to anywhere around town. That is a 2-bedroom house, so it does require 3 parking spaces. There's 2 others in the area on Tivy Street that have been approved recently. I don't think either one of these are in operation yet. They're still under remodel, but should be opening soon. Here's just kind of a general area looking across town in that part of town. You can see it up on the top side of the page there. The blue dot is the one we're talking about right now. Here's the site plan. There is an existing driveway and existing garage. Assuming the garage is left available for parking, there'd be room for 4 parking spaces. If they don't utilize the garage for parking, obviously you can see they can allow for the width for an adjacent parking space, but they would have to install that
Did
other
you say
space.
2-bedroom, Drew?
Yes, 2-bedroom. So 3 parking spaces total required. Again, standard conditions recommended for approval. Be pleased to answer any questions.
This requires a public hearing as well, so I'm gonna open up the public hearing on this at 5 o'clock. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on Prescott Street?
Over here.
Yes, sir.
My name is Michael Colleen. I live at 2120 Vista Ridge Drive here in Kerrville. I've listened to all of these short-term rental applications, and the sheer number of them are alarming. In putting commercial operations in a residential area, I think this board and the city ought to think twice about how many of these they approve. I don't object to any individual one of these, but I think this presents a clear and present danger to a lot of residential neighborhoods in the future. And the city might want to look at putting some limits on it. The last one they showed 6 or 8 within a short space. I would hope that y'all would examine them for the impact on the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you.
I tend to agree with you, and I think what happens is when you look at some of these locations where you have multiple approvals of these short-term rentals, they're in areas where the street is tending to go commercial, or it's in a location where it's very advantageous for walking to different things. And we've had that discussion already, and I think that is something that's gonna come before the city about, we're gonna put a limit on the number of short-term rentals that will be allowed within the city. It's kind of a position between property rights and what's good for the city, what's good for the neighborhoods. And there have been some of these that have come before us that some of us, all of us, I have voted against because of the neighborhood they're in, and it doesn't look like to me it's conducive for a short-term rental. But you are correct, and I think this is really becoming pretty popular. And we've had that discussion, and I think we will probably sometime after the first year start working on looking at, what type of number we can put on these things. So we're not having every block having a short-term rental in it.
Thank you very much for your consideration. I appreciate the comment.
Thank you for your
Yeah, it'll be an ongoing discussion, as it is across the state, across the country. Just in the planning realm of, professional planning across the country, there's several articles you can find addressing different cities. Obviously, each city is different in their amount of tourism versus just the local atmosphere. As Texas, obviously, we get to have local control and dictate that at the local level. Some states have gone to statewide regulation. So I think we're definitely ahead of the game by having this process and a public process so that we can look at them on case-by-case basis. Other cities across the state have not gone that route and have allowed them by right or just through a permitting process. And they're kind of seeing a heavier implication than we are. But we'll certainly keep an eye on the percentage as that increases. At this point, at least through 2021, we've had no complaints through the police department. In 2020, we did have 1 complaint on a single short-term rental that actually did not get approved. It was not approved at the time. So other than that one, we've had no complaints really over 2 years for the number, ranging from about 45 to 60, upwards of 70 short-term rentals in town. So.
Well, one of the things that we've had, and we've had this discussion since we started in January, you're correct, we've had quite a few of these conditional use permits come before us. And what we find from most of the owners of the short-term rentals is they're not looking for just a rent. They're looking, typically it's professional people, it's visiting nurses, it's families that want to come in and don't want to stay in a hotel. And the pandemic, I think, has had a lot to do with creating these demand, and VRBO is huge, and and creating, you know, an access to rent these things. And so the good news is most of the people that own these things, they're really gonna take care of them. They're really gonna monitor who goes in there, and they're really going to, I mean, they're not, from what I understand, they're not inexpensive. So, but you are correct, so. Someone else wanna speak?
Public hearing.
Yes, sir. You're the public.
Bruce Strakey, 615 Earl Garrett. You know, we bring up some really great points here, and we've talked not only in this meeting and city council meetings, but through the last 6 months about how there may be some tweaking we need to do the ordinance. And the ordinance is the magic. Because if we look at, for example, locally at Fredericksburg, a town that's a third our size, that has 10 times the number of short-term rentals that we have. And it's in the paper, and they're having a real problem in Fredericksburg. Kerrville, years ago, with our 2050 plan, and the way that staff and our city council and our planning and zoning commissions have managed this and created an ordinance that creates a process that actually helps us greatly. And it's worked. As you just noted, the lack of complaints that the city receives about short-term rentals. It doesn't mean we need to make it a little better. We do need to make it a little better. One of the things that we need to make better that's really hard to see unless you're here at every meeting is that while we have, and I cringe every time you say it, standard conditions, those are not the conditions that the property gets approved upon, which you noted, Mike, I'm sorry. In fact, one of the examples that I use regularly is there was a house on, I want to say it was on Donna Kay. It was in the Lady Streets, and it got denied.
Right.
Because it wasn't near amenities. It was in a neighborhood that did not have a commercial potential. It did not suit a short-term rental. And while those conditions are subjective and up to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the next step, the City Council, those conditions exist. And they're very important because while in the end we might make a list that looks the same, it really isn't approved because it met those last things that get listed. And that's something that's very difficult to see if you don't come meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And so I'm not trying to diminish what the gentleman said. He's right. We need to tweak our ordinance. But what we really need to focus on is the fact that not only is this a great place to live, but it's a very forward-looking place that is protecting its citizens and has been for years because we have an ordinance. And the cities across Texas that are struggling with this don't. And Fredericksburg is a perfect local example. 1/3 the size of Kerrville, 10 times the short-term rentals, because all they have is an inspection process.
Well, and that's a very good point. There is an ordinance that sets down the rules that the conditional use permit short-term rental has to go by, but that's only once it gets approved. And for me, the first thing I look at all these when we get these applications. I drive and look at all of them, and the very first thing for me, the consideration is location. And is this a location that tends to have access away from the neighborhood, or is it trending, like Bruce said, going more towards commercial? If it's in the middle, and we have had some that I voted against simply because it's just in the middle of the neighborhood, someone decided they wanted to do a short-term rental on it, and we don't have the final say. Whatever recommendation we make, it still goes to city council, and they can disagree with us and either disapprove one or approve one. But I think location, like Bruce said, I think the very first thing I look at is the location. Does it look like it's suitable for a short-term rental? So, anybody else to speak in this public hearing? We're going to close the public hearing at 5:09, and are the owners of 960 Prescott here? They are not. I can tell you my first observation on looking at this location is, to me, it's not conducive. It's not a conducive location because it is in a neighborhood surrounded by houses that has no trending towards transition or it's just a house in the middle of a neighborhood. It's not like where I would think would be appropriate. And have you heard from the owners?
I have not. Steve, did you talk with them?
Send out letters?
Yes. Yeah, we did send out letters. Excuse me just one second.
Not that I've seen anything.
Yeah, no comments back, but we did send out 27 letters to adjacent property owners. Did not hear any replies. I mean, kind of the amenities that we identified, obviously it is adjacent to Shriner Golf Course. And with the near access, obviously, to Golf and Cypress Creek and Tivy, it's near that intersection of those three collectors. So getting out of the neighborhood is fairly easy to get to those amenities.
Anybody else
I
have
guess
any
it's really-
observations?
Just down Gulf Street, you hit Holdsworth to the
I know where it is.
sports
I'm
complex, so.
Very familiar with where it is.
Mhm.
You guys have any comments or anything? Should we do what we did before and ask the owners to be here, or should we?
That's up to you. We can.
I mean, the owners of the Westminster, they couldn't be here before and they were. I don't know, what you guys think? I mean,
I don't love the location either. I think we ought to vote it down. Especially with them not being here.
well, I mean, whether the owners are here or not, my personal preference on this one is to me, it doesn't lend itself, it's not a good location for a short-term rental, that's my opinion. So if, I'm just gonna say I'll entertain a motion on
Make
this.
a motion to deny.
So we have a motion to deny. Do we
I'll
have a
second.
second? Motion to deny, second. All in favor, raise your hand. So this conditional use permit will be denied. All right, we're gonna move on to 2G. Conditional use permit for convenience store with fuel cells at 1001 Sidney Baker Street.
This is 1001 Sidney Baker Street South. This is lots 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 of Block 2, G Street South Edition. This is a conditional use permit in the mixed use zoning district to allow for the fuel sales with a convenience store. As we went through the rezoning or the zoning code rewrite, mixed use was one of the new districts that was kind of morphed out of several of the old zoning districts. One of the things that was moved to a conditional use permit is the convenience store with fuel sales. This is the site of an existing mini mart location. They do own a couple lots. Go back to the aerial.
So it's a convenience store with fuel cells.
Yeah, it is the current use, but they are tearing it down to rebuild a new store.
That's why it needs a conditional use permit.
That's correct. But it will be expanding. You can see on the aerial, they own 3 or 4 vacant lots behind them. To be a larger store, easier access, obviously more modern facilities. Here's the site plan there showing those 3 access points now. Again, spreading those access points further away from the intersection is obviously good for a traffic impact. They are gonna have another access to G Street South, that little short dead-end street that comes off of G Street. Oh, excuse me, too far. Again, it's not changing the base zoning, so it is consistent with the Kerrville 2050 plan. They do, looking at the proposed site plan, they do meet parking requirements. As far as the traffic impact, like I said, spreading those curb cuts further away from the intersection and actually closing, David, they're closing 2 curb cuts?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Eliminating 2 and moving them further away from the intersection is a tremendous positive impact on traffic in the area.
Yeah, it would be a great
So-
improvement.
Staff recommends the case for approval. Please answer any questions before or after public hearing. And Mr. Martin, I know is here, architect on the project.
Well, this does require a public hearing, but I have a question for you. Are they maintaining the existing fuel tanks that are in there now? So there's no, it's just gonna, you're just gonna
Oh, no, we're taking everything out and starting over.
so you're taking all the fuel tanks out and going with today's, okay. Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna open up the public hearing on this at 5:14. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this? conditional use permit for the fuel cells and convenience store.
And I did talk to one of the owners of ABC Storage. Talked to one of the owners of ABC Storage. Their only concern was that they weren't losing any access off of G Street South. Obviously, they're not impacting the right-of-way at all. So he was in favor of the case.
I'm gonna close the public hearing at 5:15. Does anybody
guys
have
want to
any
say
questions for owner or the owner or the architect? I mean, I looked at it, and what you guys are gonna do is a vast improvement. It's gonna make it way better for traffic on Sidney Baker there and on G Street as well, and I think it's a good idea, personally.
I agree.
Anybody else? All right, if there are no further questions or comments, I will entertain a motion to approve the conditional use permit for the convenience store with fuel cells at 1001 Sidney Baker Street.
I'll make the motion to approve as presented.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a second. A motion is second. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, motion is approved, and I look forward to seeing the finished product. Okay, we're gonna go to 2H. Zoning change from RT to PI, various lots for church campus.
Ordinance to change the zoning from RT, which is Residential Transition District, to PI, Public and Institutional District, on lots 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, Block J, and Block M of the BF Cage Edition, more commonly known as 500, 504, 508, 512, 602, 604, 608, 616, 624, 625 Washington, and 817 Barnett Street. You can see on the aerial photo here, it is both half blocks on either side of Washington Street. A little larger context here showing that across town. Zoom in a little better so you can see the aerial there. And here's the zoning map. It is currently RT, as with many of the adjacent properties. That's the orange color you see there. Adjacent to the Downtown Arts and Culture District in that bright pink. On the other side of Barnett Street, you do get into the R1A and R2 neighborhood districts. This area is within the strategic catalyst area number 1 of the Kerrville 2050 comprehensive plan. That's really geared towards downtown and revitalization of downtown, which does drift into that residential transition area as far as a catalyst area. Just looking for any kind of revitalization of the area, more investment back into those properties. Again, located on Washington Street between Barnett and North Street. North Street is a collector, which of course is designed to move that traffic from the neighborhood getting out to the thoroughfares. The church currently has multiple parking lots and currently meets parking ratios. Any expansion and any future development, those projects will be reviewed, making sure that they meet current parking standards and adequate parking if they need to add more or whatever the scenario is. Based on the consistency with the Kerrville 2050 plan, staff recommends a case for rezoning from RT to PI. I know there is a representative of the church here tonight, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Before I open the public hearing, will this require a traffic analysis study?
It will not.
Okay.
Just the zone change, since they're not doing any subdivision, they're not doing one of the proposals we have to discuss later tonight. Obviously, it's not a PD or a mixed-use request, so it does not trigger a traffic impact analysis.
So I'm gonna open the public hearing on this at 5:19. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this during the public hearing? You wish to speak, ma'am? You're just here for questions? Okay. Does anyone wish to speak on this? Okay, so if not, we will close. We do?
The Baptist Church is a really good neighbor of mine, but I'm very interested in.
Step up, please.
Bruce Strakey, 615 Earl Garrett. The Baptist Church is a very good neighbor of mine, but I'm very curious about this. And I don't know how to respond because I don't know what we're trying to accomplish here.
Well,
Right now, we're in a residential transitional neighborhood. We are an institutional department because under your Code of Ordinances, public and institutional districts include churches, schools, and similar use properties. And because we are in a residential transitional area, we can't sometimes do our signage like we need to reach the community. We can't move dumpsters around. We can't do different things because of the setbacks. And that's the only reason we're asking for the institutional qualification of our property. We're not changing anything that we do. We're not going to light up the world with lights. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to have any additional things. We're going to stay at church just like we are. So,
It's a very good comment. Like, for example, behind my property, they have parking lots which are separated from the church itself. And in the RT, that is it's a legal non-conforming use, and in PI, it would be a legal conforming use. So I agree with that. I have no problem with that. I am very concerned about the potential for a digital sign. And the church was turned down on a digital sign sometime in the last year or 18 months. And so that concerns me very much. I don't see how PI actually allows a digital sign at that location, but that's probably above my pay grade, so I don't know. But that would be, if a digital sign is intended for the church at that location, that is something that I would object to.
So,
I'm sorry,
Go ahead, ma'am. I'm
we
sorry.
are not at this point asking for an LED sign at all, because according to the city ordinance, you have to be within 100 feet of a major thoroughfare, so we cannot put up an LED sign at this time anyway.
I agree with that. So I guess I have no objection, and I really appreciate hearing about it. And again, as I started with, they are very good neighbors. I'm glad to have them as neighbors. My property backs on the alley that is adjacent to their parking lots, northwest of Washington. And they have fitness out there. They have community events in the pavilion that they build. They're wonderful neighbors, and so I really don't have any complaints. I am very concerned about digital signs.
So a question would be that if they wanted to put a digital sign in the future, that would require.
They were not eligible for a digital sign. And I'll kind of recap on both of those. The digital signs are required to be within 100 feet of a thoroughfare, which the church is not. But the RT district, which I think was kind of, again, part of the look at that, are more restrictive on signage than the other zoning districts. In RT, thinking of Earl Garrett, West Water Street, more of the small residential properties that have converted to primarily office buildings. They are limited to 26 square feet, 8 feet in height. RT also prohibits electronic display signs anyway, and you can see again that district on the map there. So the PI would allow larger signs. Obviously, it's a larger campus too. We're not talking about a single 50-foot lot like you would see some of the residential conversions along Earl Garrett. But the digital sign would still be prohibited.
So would you consider the closest thoroughfare to this property to be Sidney Baker?
Yes.
And would the changing of the zoning of all these lots get them within?
No, it would not.
Okay.
So again, they wouldn't be allowed that. When we went through the zoning code rewrite and the remapping of those new districts, most of the larger church campuses did get converted to public and institutional. I don't have any rhyme or reason why this one was left in RT or was not moved to PI. We did look specifically at a couple of the church campuses in the downtown Arts and Culture District and wanted to keep that district as uniform as possible. So we left those intentionally in the DAC district. But as you see on the map here, Hosanna Lutheran on Sidney Baker was converted to PI. That's right at the top of the page there. There's another church, smaller church, but there's another church at the corner of Barnett Street that is also RT. So again, some of the larger campuses did get converted. First Baptist Church did not. Like I said, I don't have any specific notes as to why we did not convert them over to PI, but most of the other churches did get converted over to
So
PI.
by changing the zoning classification, to PI, does that change any of, I understand there's no development planned on it, but does it change any of the requirements if there was future development on it?
Some of the setbacks would change. I think from the RT district to the PI, I wouldn't say there's anything significant, especially because they own the entire block face. So if they only owned, the middle half of that block, then you would start to see things that didn't look quite in sync with the rest of the block. But since they own the entire block, anything they do is going to look consistent with their campus. So I don't see any adverse impacts by the new zoning.
And we're actually not asking for all of our property to be converted. On the other side of Short Street, we're not asking for those lots to be converted. Those are still be residential transitional.
And that's these right here.
Where the parking lots are, and then the corner is where the bus barn is, and we're not asking for those to be changed.
Right.
Those
Those will
presently
remain residential transitional, yes, sir.
Anybody else wishes to speak in the public hearing? If not, I'm gonna close the public hearing at 5:25.
Thank you, Jamie.
There were no responses to the letters that were sent out?
No.
Any questions or concerns, guys, any comments? Pretty straightforward. All right, so I would entertain a motion on the zoning change from RT to PI for all these addresses. Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
No, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Assuming you're satisfied, Bruce? All right. Guess we're gonna go to 2I, annexation zoning of 253 Holdsworth Drive.
This is an ordinance to annex into the city of Kerrville's incorporated limits with the zoning classification of R3, multifamily residential district, for the following parcels: 6 acres of land located in the C self-survey number 626, abstract number 325, and the John Young survey number 118, abstract number 376, Kerr County, Texas, more commonly known as 253 Holdsworth Drive. You can see it on the aerial photo here. This is adjacent to Holdsworth. They do have an access point off of Pascal as well, adjacent to the existing Kerrville Plaza apartments. I don't have the property highlighted here, but we are looking at 6 acres right here. Again, they don't have current zoning because they are outside the city limits, but looking to come in as R3, which matches those 2 or 3 adjacent properties.
This is for the apartments?
Yes, it is apartment complex. I believe representatives here. Yes. If you have any questions.
This requires, I guess this doesn't require a public.
It does require a public
Yes, it
hearing.
does require a public
Yes.
hearing. So let's open up the public hearing at 5:28 and see if there's anyone here that wishes to speak on this issue, noting that we do have a letter opposing this from,
No, not on this one.
not this one, it's the next one?
The next one.
Okay, so we don't have no issues with this one. Anyone wish to speak during the public hearing on this? We can ask you questions, but we'll close the public hearing at 5:28. Any question,
I was wondering, is this an extension of the current multifamily units?
No, it's not. It's a separate development. My name's April. I'm with Overland Property Group out of Kansas City. Drew, it's nice to meet you in person. We were actually awarded tax credits in 2020 for a senior affordable development on 170 Lehman Drive. Due to COVID-related cost hikes, there's been a bit of a delay there, but we're currently undergoing debt and equity closing and hope to start construction on that one mid-February. And this is an unrelated site that we were awarded tax credits for just this past summer. It'll be 36 units of affordable multifamily housing.
it's a bit of a challenging site.
It is, yes, with environmental concerns specifically.
I mean, I've followed this along, pretty familiar with what's going on here, and I have no questions. I think this is be a pretty good addition for the city.
Thank you. And just a note too, on Holdsworth Drive, we'll be constructing an ingress egress drive So there will be access there too.
Any other questions or comments, guys? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on this annexation and zoning of R3 multifamily residential.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Right, we have a motion
A
to
second.
approve, we have a second. Motion second, all in favor, raise your hand. This motion is approved. Thank you very much and good luck.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Drew.
All right, here we go. Annexation, zoning, and ordinance to annex into the city of Kerrville's incorporated limits with a zoning classification of PI, public and institutional district, and AG agricultural district, 168 plus or minus acres.
This is a portion of the James A. Koch survey, number 144, abstract number 95. Thomas J. Waddle survey, number 145, abstract number 354. Portion of that is 157.29 acres, according to the trustee's deed filed in document number 09-07631, official Kerr County records. And a portion of Lot 1, Block 1, Peterson Regional Medical Center plat, and 9.5 acres of the warranty deed filed in volume 1557, page 63. Portion of Lehman Drive, which is a 50-foot public street, and more commonly known as 195 Lehman Drive. As you can see on the map here, we are looking at a large property adjacent to Lehman Drive, backs up to Peterson Regional Medical Center. Another portion adjacent to Rimrock Road as you go up the hill. Does include a portion of Lehman Drive. I got some exhibits to kind of show that as well. Here's the current zoning. Of course, the State Hospital and Peterson Regional Medical and some of their facilities adjacent are all zoned public and institutional. Some of the commercial adjacent is zoned C2 and C3 as you get towards the mall along Thompson's Drive. Actually, the site that Ms. Engstrom talked about just a moment ago is the R3 170 Lehman Drive. Overland Property Group's other project that's currently undergoing permitting is located right here on Lehman Drive. There's just the overall survey, or overall boundary. Again, the blue portion here, the bulk of the property is they're requesting ag zoning as a placeholder. I've got a representative of the hospital here that can expand upon that. But briefly, they're looking at their master planning for this property. At this time, they're gonna use ag zoning as a placeholder. That is the most restrictive zoning we have. Short of any subdivision, they'd just be allowed ag uses or a single family home. The portion in kind of that light red color is gonna be zoned PI. They do have immediate plans for a parking facility in that location. And that pink you can see is a portion of Lehman Drive right-of-way, so we have continuity of city streets versus county streets as we annex back around that corner. The thoroughfare plan, Lehman Drive and Leonard Lane are designated as a collector. It's kind of hard to see on this map, but Leonard Lane is actually along the back property line of the hospital. A portion of that has been dedicated. It's not an improved street, but it has been dedicated. Where that collector street continues to and through the property will be part of their master plan and what their design criteria dictates. So traffic for this development would come off of that extension, not coming off, coming up Lehman Drive, transferring onto Leonard Lane into this property. Again, any traffic impact as they do go through the development process and subdivision, based on the new subdivision code, a traffic impact analysis would be required, at least starting with that worksheet and then judging each of those developments as they come in. Off-street parking will be met based on the current zoning code, and this area is within the strategic catalyst area number 2, specifically for the hospital kind of complex that you have and the impact that it has in the adjacent area between the mall and the hospital. There's a pretty large catalyst for future development for this area. With that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
I would assume agricultural zoning is pretty appropriate for that property back there based on the topography, because you'd probably have to be a mountain goat to get up to the top of that. This requires a public hearing, so we'll open the public hearing at 5:34. Anyone wishes to speak during the public hearing? Yes, sir.
Actually, if we want to let Mr. Pizor introduce from the
Okay, sure.
hospital's
Sure,
side
sure,
first,
sure.
and then we'll
Absolutely.
let the public chime in.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Pizor, Senior Vice President of Operations at Peterson Health, 551 Hill Country Drive. So as Drew said, this is part of a larger project that we have in our master plan. So we are in the process of planning for a surgery center on the new campus. And as part of that surgery center, we need additional parking in order to be able to meet the needs of that new surgery center. And so we took a look at our existing campus, and we are pretty much landlocked in terms of being able to provide ample parking on the existing campus. And so as part of that, we did purchase the property located behind the hospital. And so the immediate plans, as Drew said, would be to put a parking lot on that public institutional area with the rest of that remaining ag. We do not have any immediate plans for development, again, as of right now on that ag part, but would just give us the flexibility, again, not in the next couple of years, but, as we look 25 years out, what will we need? Not exactly sure, but having that space will allow us to be able to meet the needs of not just Peterson, but the community moving forward.
Thank you. We have some speakers? Was there? Yes, sir?
Jack Milliken, resident of Rimrock Road, 106. And we don't neither agree or disagree with the planning, but we have a lot of questions that haven't been answered from the information that we got. We are quite concerned about the traffic, about the egress and egress, how the traffic's going to be moving around this way, because this is going to bring a lot of traffic into the area. We don't see that any provisions from our standpoint have been made for. What we've heard about is just the parking area. But we anticipate an awful lot of traffic, especially on Rimrock Road and Lehman. Lehman runs into Rimrock Road. We also see the potential for some extremely unsafe situations. Leonard Lane, as it comes off of Lehman, would make a terrible exit and entrance point if that's where the traffic flows into the hospital area. Right on a curve, 180-degree curve, very tight, and it's right in the center of the curve. So if you're there behind the ambulatory center on Lehman Lane, make that turn, I see a great deal of risk that's involved. We drive that road daily, several times. Looking to the layout of the property that's being zoned, there's eventually going to be some exit and entrance up at the top of that on the, I guess, south side of the property. And the question there is, have you made any estimates, the hospital or the city made any estimates of what the traffic is going to be on Rimrock, and how do you anticipate getting the cars in and out of the new property that's being zoned? There looks to us to be possibly two entrances and exits, one at the lower end, probably I think we saw at Rimrock or Leonard Lane, and the other quite high on that property area up around 106, 180, 280. It looks like the provision's been made for an exit at that part of it. And that's a very dangerous area either, also. In fact, Rimrock itself could be classified as a very risky road because of the steepness, because of the traffic, because of the speed. Since the hospital was brought over from the city, the traffic on that road has been increased exponentially. And if we have some more increase, it becomes very, very risky because there's about 380-degree curves going around outcroppings that make for very dangerous situations. Down at the bottom, and also if entrance exit is installed up at the top, that exit where it looks like the only way it would come out is right at an outcropping. And there is only hundreds of feet of visibility for somebody to get out on the road. And we've got residents in that area. There's a lot of hidden entrances, driveways, and they're already at risk when they come out of their driveway because they have very short visibility of vehicles, drivers coming down extremely fast. There's been nothing done at this point to, I guess, mitigate the speed. The only thing we've been gotten done is a street sign, a speed sign, and that's the only thing that we've been able to get from the county so far. So we see a great deal of concern on speed, on increased traffic, because we have a great deal of traffic cut through right now from Eastway, Westway, and Ranchero Road. A lot of cut through from coming up because they're getting to the hospital. They avoid City Baker. They avoid the stoplights that there's about, if you come off of Eastway, there is no light to get on to City Baker. So they avoid that intersection of Eastway and City Baker. So they find another way. And what they're doing is avoiding not only the entrance into City Baker with no outlet light, control street, and they cut through the subdivision that accesses to Rimrock, and they have only 2 stop signs instead of 4 stoplights and a much shorter distance. And we see that this being opening onto Rimrock is going to encourage a great deal more of cut-through traffic. So it's a very great deal of concern, not to increase traffic, but the speed that it would accelerate, encourage.
We'll try to get the answers to some of your questions. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Jim, you have any other?
Jim Arquette, 397 Rimrock Road. Jack just addressed several things I have, but there's a few other things I think would be important. Obviously this was a substantial acquisition, and if our information is correct, I assume it was all acquired by the hospital. Is that correct? So they have total control of that property. Obviously, this is even though it's in the county, this is a pretty large residential neighborhood. And as Jack mentioned on Rimrock and Lehman, the access is pretty limited. I mean, I don't see that it'd be possible to widen those roads for access to a parking lot. And if I'm understanding it, the parking lot's gonna go adjacent to Lehman Road, is that correct? Okay, so we would wanna know in a lot more detail how that's gonna be done without causing a substantial problem for increasing traffic flow. I think the issue is that we're used as a bypass now to avoid lights. And so any additional traffic without doing something to the road is gonna make it a lot more difficult. The area, I don't know if this has any significance, but is the agricultural designation simply as a way to hold the property, or there's something else that will be done with that property in the interim that's not being immediately built on?
When you say in the interim, so it's ag in terms of we don't have any plans at this point for.
Okay. So it's
not saying that we won't, but at this point we have no plans for the rest of that.
and the portion that's public and institutional, that's going to be, I guess, directly adjacent to the hospital now. Is that?
Yes, and so there will be an access from the Circle Drive that's around the hospital. And so there'll be an access point, a road that goes from the back part of the hospital to that parking lot, as well as that entrance from Lehman Drive. I will address, and I don't know if Drew or Mike or from Wellborn want to discuss, but there are no plans for any sort of entrances or exits on Rimrock.
But there will be on Lehman Road?
Yes, sir.
Okay, where exactly is that located?
As far as the entrance, that has not been designed. As you can see, the current configuration of Lehman to Leonard Drive is not really built out to any kind of street standards. So that'll be part of their design. I go ahead and let you finish, and I'll address several of these comments.
The other question is if there's any consideration for access to this proposed property, or even the parking lot, from Thompson Drive toward the hospital and from Hill Country Drive in lieu of using Lehman Drive.
So, yes. So there, again, there'll be two entrances and two exits. The one that would be able to come from Thompson coming up Wesley Drive around the hospital. And then there will be the one that will be off of Lehman. So you could access those from Hill Country Drive or from Thompson coming up Coley Drive or Hill Country Drive or Wesley Drive.
And the parking lot will be directly off of Lehman Drive. It'll be a direct access from
Lehman.
From the
yes.
street.
Yes. I'm sorry, from Leonard. Yes.
Lehman, right.
Yes.
From
Lehman onto Leonard.
Off Leonard, okay. Well, that would be a big concern, I think, for many of the residents, because where Leonard Street is it right at the sharp turn that Jack was mentioning?
Yeah, again, that has not been updated or upgraded to any kind of current street standards. So that'll be part of their design to improve Leonard Drive, redesign that intersection, working with their engineer and our engineer. So that
One of the things that'll happen is this is just a proposal to annex the property and zone it. Once that is done, they still have to go through the design and development phase, and that
Right.
still all has to be approved by the city. And once that comes up, you guys will probably be able to see what's going on if you have any comments. But whatever they do, I'm sure that there's not gonna be any safety issues with what the hospital's gonna do with their entrances going into their parking lot. And that's still, again, we're not approving anything except the annexation of the city and the zoning of the property for the use they want to do, and the ag zoning in the back. And if you're familiar with that property back there, development on that property back there will be extremely limited and will probably not be much development going up too far because of the challenges of the topography.
I think most residents feel that the annexation of that property is going to be a positive outcome. And I don't think there's a great deal of opposition to that. It's just the concern, particularly with the hospital, with the cities, that you look at the issues, particularly with the traffic concerns and ingress and egress out of that area, because it is a large residential area.
Those are legitimate concerns.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public hearing wishing to speak?
Lee Johnson, 625 Rimrock. My question is, I'm at the last house on Rimrock at Blue Sky, and Blue Sky's on the southeast side of the hospital's property. Are there any plans for a road there, since that's where the entrance is to that property, up off of Blue Sky at Rimrock? Any roads?
So as of right now, that area, we have no plans for development right now. I'm not going to say that we won't ever, but at this time, that is not part of our plans.
Okay, good. And then across my view, looking at the hospital, there's a hill right there. Do y'all have any plans of putting any kind of cell tower, any kind of towers over there for, like, the helicopters, that kind of stuff coming in?
No, sir.
Good, okay. Well, that's my questions, thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm Kendall Davison, 125 Blue Sky. So Blue Sky dead ends into my gate, and the other access point to that property is right by my gate. So again, I would echo what he said. The low part is easy to develop. The high part, if the bottom's developed, there's no real way to get there unless you come through that gate. So again, I mean, do y'all have any plans at all, any thoughts of how to access that higher property if the bottom's already developed?
So as of right now, again, no plans for that area. There are ways from that lower area that have been driven, and there are some gravel roads, if you will, that allow us to be able to travel up there without having to go on to Rimrock. So it is possible from that lower section with roads, again, they're gravel roads, but to be able to access that top portion without having to utilize Rimrock Road.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I've personally been in a vehicle and been able to make it up to that top part without having to leave that property.
Okay, so I'm assuming if there were plans in the future to develop that, and that would become an access point, is that something that would have to come back to for approval? Because that road is pretty narrow.
I can't speak, I'll let Drew speak to that as far as what would need additional approval.
The access wouldn't necessarily need approval, but any subdivision of the property requires a traffic impact analysis.
Right.
So if they have any significant traffic impact, whatever those mitigation factors, they would have to incorporate that into their development.
Anyone else over there wishing to speak?
Wesley Heinold, 607 Rimrock. I would second the traffic concerns as well, in particular off of Lehman Drive. And then just a quick question for the hospital. I understood you to say you have no current plans for the further development. How far out in advance does your forecast have you for further development? And so my question is with that 168 extra acres, there's a desire there. What does your forecast, is that a 5-year, 10-year forecast where you would need that for further development?
So right now, our main focus is on that PI area as far as the surgery center, and I would say that's probably a good, when we look at development, probably 3 years looking at the possibility, maybe a medical office building, maybe a wellness center by that parking lot. As far as a timeline for future development of that additional property, again, we have zero plans right now. We're not working with an architect, not working with engineers on trying to design anything for that property that would be annexed as ag.
Okay.
Or zoned as ag.
So with a population increase projected for Kerrville, you're not looking 5 or 10 years down the road?
We are, but again, it's hard to say what exactly. I mean, there'd be much more resources and studies that would need to be done to see what's feasible for that.
All right,
So, I mean,
thank you.
yeah, again, not saying that it would never be developed, but as of right now, we do not have plans.
Yeah, thank you for that. I understand not immediate plans. I guess my question is how far down the road before what your current plans have for that development?
Yeah, so I mean, it could be 5, 10 years. Again, I would not see anything in the next 3 years, definitely. We've got ample stuff to keep us busy on campus.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? That property would also have to go through a rezoning process since it's zoned agricultural. It would have to go through a rezoning process if there was some future plans to develop back there. You guys would all get notice on that as well. Anybody else?
Pablo Brinkman, 3928 Oak Park Drive. I know the property very well. I'm the brokers that sold it to Peterson. Bruce Strachey over here, my counterpart, represented the hospital. It's a tremendous opportunity for Kerrville, Kerr County, our community in the future. I get your concerns. I'm very intimate with the property. Walked it, every inch of it. May not look like it, but I have. Yeah, there is ways to get up there. And for the hospital to be thinking, you know, we always say Kerrville 2050. This is way beyond the current administration. This is something that hospitals of our size community and even some of the burbs don't ever have this opportunity. So for the hospital, working with Bruce and working with the current administration to be able to get it, it was very unique. So the highest and best use is for the hospital. I've tried to sell it for a number of years. It is topography. It's got a lot of topo on it. It's hard to develop. I've driven Jim on it. We got stuck there the first time we went. But it's a great thing for Kerrville. And I applaud Peterson with leaping off to not know what's going to happen and what we're going to need, because we don't know. We didn't know we'd be cordoned off like this. You know, I'm kind of wanting to sit over there by Mike right now. But we didn't know a pandemic was going to happen. So it's a great thing for Kerrville. Tremendous for our community, for the future, for them to invest in it and what may come, 10 years, 20 years. So thank you.
One of the things the hospital typically does is because it's such a long process to develop a hospital, to develop any medical facility and all of the state and federal guidelines they have to go through, their processes and their planning has to be out 10, 15, 20 years for them to be able to accomplish those. And I think Pablo makes a very good point. This is a tremendous opportunity for Kerrville Hospital and for Kerrville, the city of Kerrville, and for the hospital to consider doing something like that. So, yes, sir.
My name is Michael Cadell. My wife and I just bought a house on Rimrock Road at 280. I have a question. I can't determine from this description what the acreage is, the total acreage. I've heard 3 or 4 different numbers.
There's 2 parcels.
Yeah, the total acreage is 168 and change.
Okay, then the 157 is part of the 168?
That's correct.
So it's a whole, total of 168, yeah.
Yes.
Well, right there at 280 Rimrock, Rimrock Road is very dangerous, very narrow. There's no shoulder. It just drops straight off down into the canyon. And now the asphalt's starting to crumble. There's a big pothole there. And I wonder, is the hospital plan to have the county do any expansion on that road? There's no way to expand it out. They're gonna have to cut into the side of the mountain to get an expansion.
At this point, there's no intention to connect to Rimrock Road.
Well, people come down that road about 65 miles an hour, and it's really dangerous. And I can't imagine one more car added to that traffic.
Have you
making
guys
it any
spoken to the
safer.
county about it?
Sorry?
It's county property, correct?
It is. It's county road.
Have y'all talked to the county about it?
Yeah, we're out in the county.
You're not getting any response?
There's nothing they can do. No speed bumps, no stop signs.
Can't improve the road at all?
They resurfaced the road, what, 2 years ago? And it's already tore up.
The resurfaced road made the speed worse.
Did it?
Because it was smoother.
Makes it go faster.
So
We figured that
there's
out.
a lot of traffic, as he was saying.
There's gonna be a
From Valley View.
So it sounds like you have an issue whether the hospital develops or not. You have an issue with the county and the road.
Yeah, there's gonna be a serious accident there
Whatever they
someday.
do is gonna impact that, is our point. So they're interrelated.
Sure.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be a serious accident there someday because people drive very rapidly on that road and some very narrow, tight curves. And it's scary for me. And I've driven all over Texas, and this is the worst place I've ever lived, traffic-wise. I love the town. I love Kerrville. It's a great place. This is where we chose to retire.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anybody else before we close the public hearing? Wait a minute.
I don't know, some of y'all might not be aware, but there is another meeting on this with the Economic Development Corporation that was in last week's paper.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
It's on the, December 20th at 4 o'clock, I assume in this room.
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess my question is this our tax dollars doing all this, or what's going on?
That would be a question that you would take up to, I would say that's not of concern here at this meeting. This is a meeting only to approve or disapprove the zoning and the annexation. I would suggest that you go to the EIC meeting and you can ask your questions there. Yes, sir.
I agree. And
Basically that comes out of a 4B sales tax that the city collects, and it's used for several different, quality of life projects, things like that, and I'm sure they can answer all of your questions at that meeting.
Can I get your?
Again, we're talking about the speed. I agree with everybody in this room that lives up on that area, so. And if they do put that off of Lehman, which people don't understand, but Lehman turns into Rimrock, right there past where they're gonna put that parking lot. So when they say it's not Rimrock, it is Rimrock, okay? So if they put a parking lot on Lehman, they're gonna put a red light or something in there, cause it's gonna, like Jack and everybody else said, it's gonna be disastrous. So, I think they need to do a little bit more planning on that. I think it'd be better coming in from the back of the hospital, maybe off Thompson or whatever. But, they can't tell us that right now, cause they hadn't done the design. They're just showing it on Lehman.
Well, I think he's told you that there's gonna be 2 entrances, one's off Thompson, one's off Lehman. 2 entrances, 2
But
exits.
I'd be interested in seeing that also.
And can I get your name and address for the record?
Dillard Jones, 435 Rimrock Road.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? You wish to speak, Mr. Strachey?
Bruce Strachey, 615 Earl Garrett. I think that we've heard that there are a lot of citizens in the county that are adjacent to the city that wish they were in the city right now. Because the city has a process for this that has been being ignored for many years. And that's why we're here tonight, is because we have a process here in the city where we go through these things and listen to the citizens and talk about how to improve things, and we have better standards. And when Mr. Wellborn finishes up his design for the hospital, it'll be to the city standards, not the county standards, which we've already heard repeatedly tonight are substandard, or not acceptable, or unsafe, or of concern. And that's a wonderful thing about Kerrville and the process. And if we think back to the late 40s, when the hospital started in this community, they dedicated the hospital and its mission to making the community better. And so we know we have a good partner with the city in working on this project, because they didn't have to come and annex. They wanted to come and annex. They want to be a part of that process. They want to have this kind of interaction. I applaud the hospital and the way that they do these things and the way the city does the things, staff, the volunteers like yourselves, right? You guys don't get paid to be here, do you? I know I don't. So, you know, this is a wonderful process, and I would love to encourage people who live in the county, especially near the city, to become a part of the city and actually annex in and reap the benefits that we have in the processes that the city put in place. That is, I applaud this process. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Can't speak for the, oh.
Jack Milliken again. As far as, I guess, our dealing with the hospital in that area, we're in favor of it, because what it does is release a lot of concern of what would have been built in
Yes,
that
sir,
area.
I agree with you.
But I do have a clarification that I need, and that's the parking area that you're building, I assume is behind the hospital. And Leonard Lane is going to be all the way around the hospital. How do you get the traffic out of the parking lot and not impact Rimrock Road or Lehman? Can you give us an idea of how you're going to handle that?
So I wouldn't say that it would not impact. It has the ability to impact off of Leonard Lane onto Lehman. Again, that would be one entrance and exit. The other entrance or exit, and I can show you up here, is planned to be roughly down over here to connect to this circle drive that loops around the hospital. And so that would be the second way up to that parking lot, in addition to an entrance exit that would be somewhere in this area.
And all that stays on this side of the hospital? South side, you don't have any road going all the way around the hospital?
No, sir. The road would not extend past this area right over here.
And you're doing something on Lehman, expanding that over here as it comes up Lehman, you're taking over part of this road?
So I think that would be annexed, and we work with the city in determining what needs to happen to that road. I can't speak to that.
I can address that.
Now, the city, you mentioned, works a great deal with the
Sorry,
county.
come back to the microphone, please. We are recording.
As we understand, the city is working with the county on this. And as you work with the county, will you work with what you do as far as traffic?
City is not working with the county. City is working with the hospital.
Oh, okay, I thought you said there was some relationship of activity of county and city working together. Maybe not with the hospital?
No, sir.
No. Okay. Thank you.
So I would just like to make a comment, and then we'll close the public hearing, and if we need to hear from Mike or the hospital. I'm not gonna speak for you guys, but my assumption is once this land is annexed and zoned and you begin your process, if anyone has any questions about how it's gonna be developed or how it's gonna be routed, I would assume they could contact you guys and you could kind of show them how you're gonna do the road and the parking lot and everything. May allay some of the fears of the unknown right now. Because it appears to me that the majority of the people that are gonna come out of that parking lot, even if they use Lehman Drive, they're not going up Rimrock, they're going the other way. And most of the people that are coming in off of Lehman Drive right now don't go up Rimrock. They turn right and go towards the mall or towards the hospital or towards that area over there. But anyway, I think that might be something you guys would be able to do to take a look, because no one's looking to build something that's gonna cause traffic accidents. I mean, it appears right now you guys have an issue already, a safety issue that the county's not dealing with. And I don't think the hospital is gonna create anything that's gonna be a problem. Anyway, that's my observation. Anyone else on this? Yes, ma'am.
Di McMahon, 2311 Burkdale, here in Kerrville. In listening to all this, another thought occurred to me that I just wanted to put on the record to the hospital, and that is putting in a parking area, you have to be extremely careful about how they do it. Previously, clearing along Lehman Drive has resulted in a lot of runoff and damage to the properties lower down. So, sorry, my back's to you. But whenever they consider parking, it's very, very important they put the proper infrastructure in to prevent further damage down Lehman. That's all I
I
had.
think they would agree with you. All right, we're gonna close the public hearing at 6:06. Mike, do you have anything you wanna interject into this before
No,
we?
sir. Only thing I would say is on Lehman, the plan is to make it more like a T intersection with Leonard.
Okay.
So still got the details to work out, but it'd be
Yes, sir.
more like a three-way stop at that location.
So that might alleviate some of the concerns as well. Any questions? Any comments, guys, before we move forward on this?
So just kind of capturing a lot of
Yes,
that
sir.
discussion. Obviously, we are here for the annexation and zoning. As you heard from the hospital, they have not finalized any designs. They do have that first phase. The intention is that parking lot that is an immediate need for the hospital as they're continuing to expand with their surgery center and some other projects. Mr. Wellborn stated we are looking at connecting Leonard Drive to Lehman Drive right there at the curve. That is not a built-out connection as it is today. They'll be working, Mr. Wellborn's office will be working with our engineering office to make sure that's designed adequately. With the recent adoption of the subdivision ordinance that this commission and council looked at this year, when they subdivide the property, they are required to do a traffic impact worksheet, at least to start with. That worksheet may or may not trigger a bigger engineering analysis. Just for example, if you're on a major highway, if you're adding a significant impact on traffic, a number of traffic counts, you might have to do an additional turn lane, or additional stoplights, stop signs, as you mentioned, maybe a three-way intersection. They'll be required to make those improvements based on that analysis, whatever comes out of that engineering study. I think the biggest benefit, obviously, to the community and the county residents is that this will have the oversight of the city. We are looking to annex.
Huge.
Looking to annex that portion of Lehman Drive, and I'll go to that exhibit real quick. The current city limits stop on Lehman Drive in front of 170 Lehman. Again, that's that residential, multifamily residential project that we just spoke about. Excuse me. At the end of that pink line, that's the current city limits. We have notified the county that we are looking to annex a portion of the county road. I've had no contest to that, otherwise they'd have a representative here. So the city is looking to annex that portion up to the property line of the hospital to keep that continuity of city street versus county street, primarily for the sake of that intersection at Leonard. As the property develops, that'll go through our review process for subdivision, building permits, inspection process, all the infrastructure that will be reviewed by our staff, both in design and in construction. But again, today, we're really just looking at the annexation and the zoning of that. They have acknowledged this ag portion of the property is a placeholder. They are working on their master planning to see what those needs are, what those timeframes are, and what the big picture dream in the sky is gonna be for the next 20, 50 years for the hospital, as that regional medical center. So as they do figure those plans out and as they have those needs, they can come back and rezone the property. As you mentioned, any of those zone changes based on those boundaries would be required notification to adjacent property owners. If that is immediately adjacent to these property owners here today, they'll get notice again. So as it kind of moves forward, it's obviously a long-term project, but being able to get it in the city definitely helps facilitate the hospital's planning needs because they know what to expect with the city rules versus being in the county and having different sets of rules, trying to establish what those regulations are. Again, this is in the strategic catalyst area of the Kerrville 2050 plan, intended for that area around the mall and the hospital being two large catalysts on what develops around those. So this is absolutely consistent with the Kerrville 2050 plan. Staff recommends the case for annexation and zoning as presented.
I would make two comments, and my first comment is that you guys will find out that having this property annexed into the city is a huge benefit for you as county residents, and having the city control of what's done there and how it's done. That's an absolute benefit no matter what happens there. And number two, Peterson Regional Medical Center is a private hospital, a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. And everything they do to expand the hospital is to benefit us as residents of Kerrville and surrounding areas. So whatever they do, it will be good for us and the future generations of people that live in Kerrville, because it's an absolute benefit to have a medical center like Peterson here in a city of this size. That's my thoughts on that. So any other thoughts, guys, before we make this? Yeah, okay. So I would entertain a motion on the annexation and zoning of two parcels.
Motion to approve.
So we have a motion to approve. We have a second. All in favor, raise your hand. So the motion on the annexation and the zoning is approved. And look forward to seeing what you guys do. Thanks. All right. We're through all our public hearings, we're through all our CUPs, we're through all our annexations and zonings. We're gonna go to 3A, which is consideration and final action for the zoning code update. Sure, everyone is extremely interested in this.
I do have the PowerPoint that we actually looked at in October if you want for reference.
Okay.
Martin, can you switch PowerPoints for me? Thank you, sir. Just kind of as a guideline. As the commission discussed in October, when we did have our public hearing, wanted to see the final draft come back to the commission before you guys kick it on to council. So you have that draft before you. One thing that is not included in this draft ordinance is the fence discussion that we had, and you have a separate sheet for that. I'll address that separately just because it is kind of a little bit different than we originally presented. I can go through the ordinance order or PowerPoint order, and you guys keep up one way or the other, however you want to do it.
You're in charge.
Okay, I'll go through the ordinance, and I'll fiddle with the PowerPoint as I need. Just kind of running through first page, or I guess page 2. Short-term rental, you'll see that we struck the limitation on bedroom count. Again, as we studied more of the building code implications on short-term rental, it really became down to occupancy that triggers different requirements on the building code, and we want the zoning code to mirror that. So a short-term rental unit, again, that was a residential property with not more than 10 occupants. What that kind of does when we move into the permitting side, if someone were to present a very large house that has, say, 10, 15 bedrooms or whatever the case is, they anticipate more than 10 occupants. From a zoning standpoint, we now say you don't qualify as a short-term rental. You're now either a bed and breakfast or a hotel, which triggers commercial zoning and commercial building code. So we're just trying to get those two terms in alignment between the two different codes. One we didn't talk about a lot, but we did briefly discuss it. There have been some changes to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. I wish Mr. Clean had hung around because he's on that board. There have been some changes to the Zoning Board of Adjustment rules at the state level. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. In the bottom of page 2 is the notifications that we talked about. Mr. Lipscomb, you kind of brought it up initially. That city staff will post properties with some visible signage when they're subject to a public hearing. So it's not just the newspaper notice, not just the notice to adjacent property owners, but then we'll have the visual notice as well. Again, we weren't gonna get any specifics of what that signage was in the ordinance, but our intention is, you know, similar to a real estate size sign, so it's not sticking out like a sore thumb, but obviously gives adequate notice, where to find the information, whether that's city website or city department contact information. And we'll work out those details as we get through council.
We call this the David Lipscomb ordinance.
Sure can. No, and I really do appreciate it. It's a good concept.
I absolutely agree. I can't take credit for it.
Like I said, during our first presentation, at other cities, we've looked at larger notification areas, for the mail out notices, if that's adequate, what are the impacts there? I think this is a much better approach because it does get the people that may have an impact but might not live 200 feet away. They might drive the street and live a block and a half away, and it may or may not have an impact, but at least they get that notification.
Right.
Top of page 3, again, we're looking at the required findings of fact for the zoning board of adjustment as they're looking at a variance to the code on a specific project. Of course, you'll see A through G has no changes. Flip to page 4. I might jump in here if I missed anything on this one.
This is where Mike got involved?
I won't blame it on Mike, he just helped draft it. State legislature did make some changes to the authority of the zoning board of adjustment, actually to consider a financial hardship as part of a variance. Up until this recent legislative action, financial hardship was not a reason to consider a variance. So it actually expanded what a variance could be considered as. So we haven't changed the rest of the criteria, but added that financial hardship as a potential factor in approval of a variance. Section 60-41 of the current ordinance is the use of property located in one district to benefit another. Again, we've looked at this section of code, trying to figure out really how it would apply to different developments around town. Most of the scenarios that we've at least conceptually kind of painted in our minds, kind of staff working through it, really what we determined is if an adjacent property is adequate for the primary property to be used for parking or accessory buildings, whatever the case is, really the zoning should match. Rather than have one project cross two different zoning boundaries that don't directly align. Really getting more to that simple zoning. If it's gonna be used for that project, they ought to be zoned the same. They may still be separate properties, but at least have the same zoning.
Right.
So as we kind of worked through several scenarios, rather than try to tweak this to tighten it up or be more not more restrictive, but more defined, decided it's probably better just to take it out, and really handle that at a zone change level rather than just a administrative project. Sections 6 and 7, you'll see, we are bringing in the traffic impact analysis to the mixed use zoning and PD zoning requests. The reason we limited it to those two zoning changes, those two applications require a site plan. So those projects have identified what the land use is, what the project's gonna be, size, scale, all those things are important to doing a traffic impact analysis. Whereas your other zone changes may be more speculative. And Mr. Sigmund, you brought up the church today. Would that trigger one? As you heard, they don't have any development plans.
Right.
So there's nothing to analyze at that point, so why require an analysis that doesn't change anything as it sits currently? Really, the next steps, if we want to continue down that path of traffic impact analysis, some cities go as far as each building permit's required a worksheet and a potential analysis. I don't think we're there yet. I think one of the big benefits Kerrville has is our major thoroughfare system is all under TxDOT purview. And they have a separate set of requirements that they can apply to it at the building permit level or beforehand. Top of page 6, As we talked about the building permit or the maximum building height in the public and institutional district. This primarily came up looking at the hospital and some of their projects. But the language in this section did not match the rest of the zoning code. It really matched one of the earlier iterations of the draft zoning. And so you'll see that there is no limit no height limit except when it's adjacent to a residential district. In which case it has the normal step down. The further the project is away from the residential district, the taller it can be. The closer it gets, the shorter it has to remain. Section 9, fortunately we haven't had any issues, but we did notice, our staff pointed out that we don't have any rules for garage sales. It was previously in the zoning code and in the rewrite got left out. We don't require permits for garage sales, but we do limit, the old code limited them to 4 per calendar year at one location and no more than 3 days. Again, fortunately, we don't have a real issue with someone running a used retail shop from their garage, like a garage sale every weekend. But that's kind of what it's intended to prevent, is that commercial reuse retail coming into the residential neighborhoods. Section 10, looking at travel trailers and recreational vehicles. Let's see if I can find that slide because it's a little more direct than this one. Just a second. So one of the things we really didn't have any regulations on was the use of a recreational vehicle in an RV park. Actually, the vehicle itself. And we wanted to clarify that there is no length of stay limitation in an RV park, but there is a length of stay limitation in a residential neighborhood. So if you look at subsection C on page 7, middle of the page, travel trailer or recreational vehicle parked in a residential district must be parked on a lot that includes a dwelling unit with a certificate of occupancy, so we don't want them on vacant lots. Occupied by one or more people that don't claim the trailer as a permanent residence, and then located for a period not to exceed 14 days. Top of the page, section B is really looking at the travel trailers or RVs in a park, whether it's RM district or C3 district. And similarly, on the bottom of page 6, any of those mobile home parks also allow a percentage of RVs to be located on site. Shipping containers, again, this one was initially brought up by a council member through some conversation with Schreiner University. Let me go back a couple slides here.
So when you say 14 days, Drew, that means if I own a home and I park an RV in my driveway, it's limited to 14 days?
No, storage is different.
But what if someone's staying in it?
So if you've got family members that come visit you in their RV, they can stay for 14 days. But after 14 days, they would have to move it. Sorry, bottom of page 7. D, subsection D, a travel trailer or RV may be stored,
Yes.
parked, and not active use on a development lot. So
Right.
you can store your RV on your property, but you can't have anyone staying in it for more than 14 days.
Okay.
Shipping containers, kind of as we discussed, really looking at the public and institutional district. So if I can get back to the zoning map without bogging down too bad. Wrong way, sorry. The public and institutional is kind of that light blue color. So we didn't want to impact areas all over town because it is spread out across town. So we limited it to a property not less than 5 acres, where the shipping container is at least 100 feet from a residentially zoned district. The container shall be set back behind a line parallel to the most adjacent building, and either covered by a screening fence or at least color matched to the adjacent buildings. So as we look at a couple examples around town, again, not trying to pick on anybody, but just looking for examples. Obviously, these two would not qualify by that because they're not color matched or screened. The one on the top of the page, if they painted it to match the R panel on the existing building, there would be no issue there because it is behind. Let's see. And again, this one's grandfathered, so it's not going to have to make any changes. But as you can see, it's obviously behind that front portion of that building. So as long as it were color matched and didn't stand out, the red against the tan, that would be allowed. The bottom picture is Shriner University, one of the projects that they started, and kind of waiting final approval. There is actually a shipping container right here. Sits directly in front of the dugout for the baseball or softball field there. Obviously from the street, this is actually zoomed in pretty far. From the street, driving by, you can't tell the difference between a CMU wall painted white or a metal shipping container painted white. And it's behind the concession stand that you see here that's actually a lot closer to Main Street on the left side of the page there. So really kind of the goal was to be able to allow them without having a negative impact on the adjacent area, focusing on those larger properties and really not having too much of a visual impact as well. Section 13, bottom of page 8, just goes back to the signage of the property. And then you'll see on your land use table, let's see if I can get the right pages here. On the third page, you'll notice we added medical office to the public and institutional district. On the last page, added shipping containers as a use allowed in the industrial district, public and institutional district, and the airport district. Again, all those large properties and generally fairly industrial uses on the IM and AD side of things. And you'll notice we actually removed them from the residential districts. The current code doesn't specifically address them, so as a structure, they would be allowed. This way, we're calling them out so that they're not permitted in residential districts. Any questions on those? Okay. Going to the other page. Got two-sided on fences. When we initially started talking about the fence, updating the code for fences, one of the big concerns we had was we reference ornamental fence in the code several times as far as what those regulations are. Never defined what ornamental fence is. Obviously that can become pretty subjective, so we wanted to make sure we defined that. Through the 2019 zoning code rewrite, the discussion that the code review committee had, planning commission at the time had, and council was really looking at wrought iron fences. The initial goal was to not allow your 4, 5, 6 foot tall solid fences in front yards of residential properties. So they wanted to put a height limit on a solid fence, but with dogs and household animals or wild animals, keeping them in or out, giving the option of a taller fence to keep dogs and cats in and deer and other animals out. Allowed for the ornamental fence, which at the time we discussed as wrought iron style fencing, to be up to 6 feet tall in the front yards. There's not creating a visual obstruction, but just a physical barrier. So that's what the option 1 really gets to, is defining ornamental fence. We don't have a definition for screening fence, so we want to go ahead and add that anyway. Just since we're looking at fence definitions. That blue line in the middle of that paragraph really just clarifies that a fence may be a portion solid, a portion ornamental, or either or. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be a combination of materials. Like add a couple pictures of those in here. So something like this, the brick could be up to 30 inches, The wrought iron total height could be up to 6 feet. It doesn't have to be wrought iron only if you're gonna do an ornamental fence. Since our initial discussions, we've had a couple of different projects come up with citizens, building ornamental fences that are not wrought iron. So we've had some dialogue at the council level with citizens saying that this is really too far of an extreme for just looking at aesthetic. If visibility is the issue, I've heard several different references, but kind of your deer fence, hog panel type wire fence, chain link fence, those don't obstruct view, but they do allow that physical barrier if needed for, whatever the property is looking for. So the back side of the page, you'll see a much different description. I'll just kind of go ahead and read it since I don't have it up on the screen. Still adding the definition for screening fence. Again, we don't have one. But modifying that section for fencing that no structure in excess of 30 inches may exist between the front wall of a building and the front property line. Fencing materials that do not obstruct normal view allowed above 30 inches, or are allowed above 30 inches, and up to a maximum of 6 feet in height. This would include wrought iron style fencing, chain link fencing, or other wire fencing. Fencing may include a combination of wood, brick, rock, or other solid base not to exceed 30 inches in height, overall height not to exceed 6 feet. And then, of course, no element of the fence may create a visibility obstruction, otherwise interfere with pedestrian or vehicular circulation. On this one, looking at direction from commission, do we want to hold the line at both visibility and aesthetics, keeping the wrought iron style fence only? Or look at some of the citizen comments and feedback that council's gotten over the last year and just focusing on visibility, which would allow those other styles of fencing. Just looking to get some feedback and direction. Obviously, we can kind of refine this language a little bit. Mike and I didn't want to draft it in ordinance since we still had 2 options to weigh in on.
Well, personally, I like the emphasis on visibility. Not a big fan of chain link fences, but I don't know how restrictive can you really be? I mean,
Right. And kind of backing up, when we went through the zoning code, I don't remember really getting a lot of community feedback on the fencing section, other than we don't want 6-foot solid fences. So I think the feedback we got may have fallen short of what the goal was or what the direction was from the community. We've handled the visibility portion, but we did go pretty far on restricting the aesthetic portion.
well, I mean, and you get into substantial difference in cost.
Absolutely.
Ornamental fencing and chain link fencing, screen fencing.
Right. We've had several homeowners look at doing, at least what I grew up calling a hog wire fence, 1/8 to 1/4 inch wire that's in a panel, 4 to 6 inch openings, with a wood frame and wood posts, wood top rails. Also I've heard it called deer fence. Some are more of a roll wire, similar kind of thing it's not visually obstructive by any means, but does allow that physical barrier. I'm not sure how to really define that from a code standpoint and not allow chain link, because when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, one has a wood post, one has a metal post.
I agree.
They're both a wire mesh of some kind. And like I said, over the last year, we've heard from at least a handful of citizens at the council level during just public comments that they want that option. Obviously, we haven't had anyone here talking about fencing too detailed, but just
I
try to
don't
carry
really
that
have a
back and
problem with it. I mean, you'll get into some, covenant restricted neighborhoods where they won't allow it, but in general, what you guys think?
It seems like in a way there's an issue related to just wood. I mean, wood is more a maintenance issue. You got rot and whatever.
And looking at several other ordinances, just try to see where different cities kind of drew that same line. I've seen some ordinances that start getting into definitions of the opacity of the fence and how much solid versus void space you have. As you go that route, you could have your kind of traditional picket fence where every other picket is left out. that's 50% void. That style fence, 6 feet tall, is still fairly solid. I mean,
Yeah, it's also,
still pretty obstructive.
it's very obstructive. That's really not what I would call transparent.
Right. So then do you try to define 90% voids versus, I think we're getting down a path that's really hard to define, to make it as simple as possible for the citizens to really
Agree.
understand is,
Absolutely agree.
if it's solid, it's this tall, if it's see-through, it's this tall, and everything else in between is pretty self-explanatory. So,
I'm with you. I agree with you. I think having
Okay.
some options that not as expensive.
yeah,
yet-
like you said, different
yet they
neighborhoods
provide
have
the-
different levels of
yeah.
standards, so. And again, whether it's Kerrville wide or statewide, there's a lot of different standards. I know growing up in Lubbock, never seen a deer fence. It was chain link or picket fence. There wasn't anything else. But
That would be my opinion.
okay. So I've got two options. Can look at approving, two options on the fence, obviously, option 1 and option 2. Sounds like we've got consensus for option 2, making an assumption there, but.
Mine, I don't know.
I agree.
Y'all
Yeah.
okay with that?
So you can approve the ordinance that you have drafted and carry that on to city council with or without the fence. We can bring the fence back more refined and drafted, or just include that and we'll carry that on to council as it included in that draft.
What's your preference, Mike? Put it together?
To take both of them to council?
Bruce is wanting to make a comment.
I mean, my preference is your preference, whatever y'all want to do. I mean, I think it's easier if y'all, if you could reach consensus on which way you want to go. I think council would appreciate that. But if you can't, you can't, right? And we'll take them.
Do you have a comment, Bruce?
Bruce Strachey, 615 Earl Garrett, and I apologize, I probably should have turned in
Okay.
this is not a public hearing. First off, and it's not a criticism, but hopefully a constructive criticism, this attachment was not available to the public, and so I have not been able to read any of this prior to coming to this meeting.
Talking about
All
the
I've
whole
just heard
zoning
about-
thing or just the fence?
The entire thing was not available as part of the package.
No, we just got it today.
I know, so I'm just making a comment, constructive comment. It's very difficult to know how to respond to these things when you can't read beforehand, and you guys are getting ready to send it to city council. What I really wanted to talk about, though, is, and there was a third one, I can't remember, but first off, containers, I was confused. So they are not allowed on properties that are smaller than 5 acres?
Correct.
So that's by tax parcel, not by zoning?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'm
Or,
not
I
picking
guess
on them, but for
tax parcel
example,
or
the
platted
Baptist
lot.
church can't do containers because they're a bunch of small lots. But Shriner can do containers because they're a large lot. Okay, thanks, I understand that. Second, in most of the, and I've never understood this, and I don't remember if I commented before on the fence issue or not, but I think I did, perhaps in writing between Drew and I. I've never seen a community where before the front elevation of a home, you could have a fence over 42 inches high. Usually you can have that high 6 or 8 foot fence from the front elevation along the sides and the back. But from the front elevation to the right of way, typically 42 inches is considered the maximum height that a fence can be. And so it's always surprised me that we are allowing 6 foot fences. And I understand the deer issue, so perhaps, but I've never seen that in another community. And Drew's obviously got examples where they do allow it, so I'm just not familiar. But that really surprises me. And I don't sell residential homes, but I find that really interesting that we can, before that front elevation of the home, between that and the street, that we can put basically a 6 foot high fence. And so it's just a comment more than anything, but it does surprise me and I don't like it.
I think there's two things about it. I think number one, it's a security issue because you put a 42-inch fence up and someone can just step over it or hop over it. You put a 6 foot fence over it, and they really kind of got to climb over to get in your yard. For my wife, the bigger issue is all the roses she puts out in the front yard. She wants, we built our house and we put this 48-inch fence up out there because that's what we needed for the pool. Spent, I don't know how much money on plants, and 2 weeks later, we get up one morning, there's 15 deer in the yard. So we put a 6 foot fence up. So I don't know, you know, I don't have a preference one way or another, to be honest with you.
And I actually haven't seen many ordinances allowing over 42, 48 inches in the front yard. I do remember some of the public hearings say, but the deer can clear that and don't want them in our.
Is there a reason why you don't like the 6-foot fence, or you
No,
don't?
I don't think it's community. I don't think it's friendly. I don't think it is a residential image that we want to have. But I'm not a residential broker. I don't sell residential houses. I might be disassociated with people who want to buy them here. And so I admit that. It just strikes me as really odd.
And I can think of 3 off the top of my head that I've seen. One was solid prior to the zoning code rewrite. We got enough complaints that it made the list of something to handle in the rewrite. And we actually did get a lot of feedback on that one to prevent that. Another one was, I want to say it was 5 feet high or so. The top portion was not completely solid. It was more of kind of the alternating slats. Given the current ordinance, they actually took that top portion back down to, I think, 30 inches. And I can think of one other that really is kind of the true deer fence. Wood frame, panels, hog wire, 6 feet tall, but driving by, you almost don't even see the fence. Because it is so see-through, I guess. But other than that, I haven't seen any. I understand your point. I think if
And I don't know the answer. You guys have a tough job, and I'm glad it's not mine. It just struck
I
me
don't
as
know
funny,
that.
and I wanted to comment.
You know, I mean, beyond the feeling of neighborhood, I think you really need to have a reason to restrict it.
Yeah.
I think you need to have a reason to tell someone they can't have a 6-foot fence in their front yard. They may have kids, you know, they may have animals, they may have.
And that's, again, the 2019 draft set 6 feet. I wasn't even looking to change that with this draft, just really looking at the materials.
If I might, I'll throw out one.
Okay.
We've got some Yopon hollies in our front yard. And deer, male deer, love to come break their antlers and get the fuzz off, and they damage the trees.
Sure. I put cages around my trees.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they can kill a tree.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with, you know, I don't really have an opinion one way or another. I just think you need to have a reason to tell someone they can't put a 6-foot fence up. That needs to be more than a feeling of, you know, doesn't feel good to me.
Right.
But going back to the question of, I like option 2 on the fencing. I like to give, you know, I like to give the option to use the chain link or whatever. And I don't have an issue, if we can agree with it, of just letting it all go to city council at one time, so they don't have to look at a fence ordinance separate.
Okay. Does everyone agree with that?
Only one person, but.
Okay. Then we'll do that. I do still need a motion, but at least we've got some direction on where to go.
Okay, so can we get a motion on presenting this with the option 2 on the fence to?
Motion to approve.
There you go.
Second.
With the option 2.
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor, raise your hand. Right.
Sounds good. The only thing I've got for staff update is we've got a meeting on January 6th. I guess you ought to be over New Year's by then, right? January 6th, we have, how many applications do we have so far? 2?
So are you going to, we have 4 people here. You're not re-upping. Tricia's
Yes.
not re-upping. David's termed out and we have a vacancy. So
And Shane
we gotta
moved,
do a
right.
fast track on, we need 4.
I believe the deadline's tomorrow.
And I think they're gonna consider appointments at the December 14th.
Yeah. So council's looking at those December 14th. I think I've heard mention of 6 names that may be applying for those 4 spots. I know we have 3 applications that are in. At least for Hunter and David and Tricia, they serve until replaced if they're still willing to show up. So if we do fall short of that, of getting all 4 spots, pointing at Hunter just because he's here, he could still be on the board until he's actually
So
replaced.
this is your last meeting, Hunter?
Unless that scenario comes up.
Unless we don't
Yeah.
get-
We appreciate all the
Yeah,
work.
it's been a
you put
pleasure.
in.
I've learned a lot.
Great.
It was,
You're not leaving though, right? You're not
No.
leaving town?
no.
So, same to Tricia and David, and of course, we talked to Shane before he left last month. It's always great having board members come on and kind of engage. Sad to see him go, but I understand. I know different things change. David termed out, so he's gonna have to wait a year before he can
He's
come.
celebrating, having a drink somewhere, trust me.
I noticed he said he wasn't coming tonight. I didn't pick his brain as to why, but
Anybody have anything they want to put on next?
yeah. Any other items of discussion coming up? And as we mentioned tonight, we'll keep short-term rental kind of an, ear to the ground and
I
kind of see
think we
what we're
need to
seeing.
address that issue and try to look at somewhere in the near future to try to figure out what would be appropriate for limiting numbers.
Yep. And there's also some
distances
other
between possibly or something.
court cases that have been brought up that we're keeping an eye on and just watching to see if there's gonna be any legislation come down that track too, because I've heard, I don't know if it's all Texas or across the country, some places you're looking at, you can't restrict them.
We may
So
face that. I don't know.
hopefully we don't end up in that, because I think, as we have really dug into what's a good process, I think we're at least at a good middle ground. So anyway,
That it, guys. As always, we appreciate staff support. You guys do a great job, and we appreciate all the good work you do for us in the city. We're adjourned.
thank you.